Hello and welcome back to the Better Divorce podcast. I'm your host, Paulette Rigo, and today we're going to talk about life after divorce because you know what? There is one. I'm living proof. If I can make a beautiful life after divorce, anyone can. So today I have a wonderful guest. Her name is Karen Gottlieb, and she is a clinically trained mental health therapist, but she's also an author, a speaker, and what she calls a soul strategist. We'll have to talk about that more. Who helps women rise from the burnout, and yes, divorce will do that to you, break out, and major life shifts that happen through mindset work, nervous system healing, and intuition. So, welcome to the Better Divorce podcast, Karen.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm glad we found each other.
Yes.
I love to be able to give experts in their fields to my listeners to help them navigate these stormy, crazy waters. Now, I would like to start off a little bit about why you're so passionate about doing this work. Why would you possibly want to help women after divorce?
Oh my goodness, that is a loaded question.
It is, but I
This
know you
was,
can answer it.
it was never my passion. It was never my goal. If you had asked me a decade ago, I would have said, you know what? The only divorce I ever dealt with was my parents, and it wasn't thrilling, but it was a long time ago. Fast forward a few years, and after decades in what I thought was a good, solid marriage, I found myself not in a good, solid marriage. And start of 2020, my world imploded. Spent the entire lockdown in the exact same house with the party I am no longer married to. And when I came out on the other side, I was in a very dark, heavy place. And if I could have stayed in the closet crying, I would have. But that's not me. And fortunately, I had a couple of women around me who said, you can't do that. So I found myself pushing through and using all the strategies I had used with women for 20 years prior in my life coaching and in my therapy practices on myself. I took my own advice, I got my help, and I moved through. And I realized divorce is not the end of the world. It is just the end of that chapter or that book. And so I found other women asking me, how did you get there? And like you get to that point where there's enough people knocking on your door asking for help. The universe says you have to move forward. You have to help. So that's how I landed in divorce land.
It is one of those spontaneous tipping point moments when the doorbell rings or your phone rings and you get a text message or an email or a phone call, right? People reach out to you. And I knew thousands of women because of the other careers that I'd had. And those of you that know me know that I used to teach dance. I was a choreographer. I modeled with Ford and ran the children's division of Ford Models. So again, I knew a lot more, people through that, particularly little girls that grew up and were modeling. But I also taught yoga, another thing women do. And I was a birth doula. And of course, birth, that no need to explain who was in the room, and lactation consulting, helping women breastfeed. And then I started my own registered yoga school and started teaching yoga teaching trainings and then studio openings and retreats. And I kept attracting hordes of women. And I mean that in a good way. Just a flood of women came to me through the world of dance and performing arts and theater and modeling and yoga and also macrobiotic cooking and then counseling and Ayurveda, which is sort of a life skill and lifestyle practice and science. So with all these women around me, it just became just that, Karen, right? Of like people reaching out for help. And they weren't asking me to deliver babies with them or help them, perfect their sun salutations or teach them how to do, tour jetés and, switch leaps or time steps. And I wasn't teaching them how to cook miso soup, although I can do all those things. Yeah, I studied macrobiotic cooking. So it was about divorce, like their marriage, their relationship, like help, how did I get here? Why is this happening? How come I'm so miserable? And my spouse, they change, but they don't change forever. And then what do I do? And like they don't realize that marriage is a legal binding contract and that now you're embroiled in this legal entanglement of finances and parenting plans and domestic relation financial affidavits, and there's so much overwhelm and fear, and there's not a lot of accountability when you go through the legal process. Lawyers charge an hourly rate, and if you don't do something well, that's fine, they'll just charge you another hourly rate until it gets done, until eventually the judge says, whoa, it's been, in my case, 8.5 years, let's figure this one out, people. Of course the appeals didn't help, but when it comes to that, so you turned your own kind of pain into a purpose.
I
Uh,
did. It was one of those things where I there's nothing quite like the gut punch of knowing all of a sudden the life you had yesterday, or in my case, at 7 a.m., my life was one way. At 7:15, I picked up a phone, my life looked another way. And it was just everything I knew, the entire foundation was gone.
right.
And I don't wish that on any woman.
Yeah.
And if I can help in some small way, just be a lifeline. And one of the biggest things I say to women is, you know what? It feels really dark and uncertain and heavy now, but this is just a moment in time and it will pass. But there are steps you need to take to get through it.
Mm.
And mindset mastery is the big one. And obviously, having an amazing support system and a legal team, a legal system, whatever fits to help you get through that divorce. But without that, nobody can do it alone. And that's what I realized. And a lot of us try, but we're not successful. So we absolutely need each other to navigate through.
Well, going back to that moment between 7 a.m. and 7:15 a.m.,
Mhm.
um, what do you believe, if we could wave a magic wand and go back to that? Acceptance is naturally, I always call it a radical acceptance and realistic expectations. You have to have both. But if we could go back, what do you think the biggest mistakes you made were?
Oh my goodness.
I don't mean in the marriage, but like in the reaction. Although maybe you want to talk about the marriage, I don't know. Um,
Oh,
maybe not, but that's up to you.
you
But like,
know,
well, if you could do it over again, what are the things that you feel you made the biggest mistakes doing?
okay, so for me, I actually don't. My ex and I are on coexisting terms. So if we need something, we have a grown, flown out on their own child. So there's nothing that we need to handle in terms of that kind of stuff.
Great.
But if there's something that either one of us has a question about or needs to deal with, it's 99% it's text or email and respectful. We just, that's how we roll because we did create a tiny human together and we are tied together. And at one time, we did stand up before, God and the owner of the local pool hall, who happened to be a minister.
That's hysterical.
It was a tiny little town, and we professed our love for each other. Now, fast forward a couple decades, that was not the person that I divorced. He divorced, like whatever. We're not the same people,
People change, sure.
right? And the biggest, when you ask what I would do differently, is I lost myself somewhere in those 20 something years. I walked away from a career because we relocated for his career. Now, walking away from that career let me be a stay at home mom, which was great. But it also was a stay at home mom 2,000 miles away from family and friends. So, over 20 years, I never had the same source of support because I didn't go to a traditional job. I worked from home. Everything I did was online or things like that. So I lost out on a lot of who I was in those years. Also, we didn't take a lot of time to do couple things. So people would say, well, did you travel? Yes, we traveled over the holidays. And, he came from a divorced family. I came from a divorced family. So we had all the sets of grandparents and things like that. So our traveling was not, oh, let's take a cute little trip for the holidays and see everybody in one spot. It was 5 days or 10 days of this parent, this grandparent. And by the time we got back, everything had been about everybody else, and we were exhausted. And we never really communicated well. And I mean, and that's on both of us, on both of our parts. We never communicated well. And I'm going to say this, and most people don't believe me when I say this, but in the 20 something years we were together, actually closer to 30, we never argued. I am by nature a very passive person. Um, he is as well, but we never argued. So we never spoke our minds. And ultimately, we became two people living a parallel life in the same house. And that last moment, when you asked, when I picked up a phone at 7 o'clock in the morning, the text I saw sent me over the edge. And that was the time where I finally, 20 something years into it, almost 30, I lost it. And I let out everything I had, both barrels. He got it with both barrels. And then I continued my day, which was driving to the airport and getting on a plane to go for business 700 miles away. And we spent the next few days having conversations by phone. But ultimately, what I realized was, we didn't communicate enough in those 20 something years to be able to fix this moment in time. And it was not going to last. I knew it. It was over.
So when you say that you felt like you lost yourself, this sense of losing your identity, were you aware that you were doing that during the marriage, or was it more subconscious or unconscious?
It was very subconscious. It was one of those where I went from being Karen to being his wife. And then 15 months later, I was my kid's mommy. And it just, wherever we went, it was either I was mom or wife. I really lost myself in there. And there was because we lived so far from family and friends, there was nobody who really said to me, hey, Karen, you know what? Why haven't you, done X, Y, or Z? You used to do this all the time. You used to go, to the library and read. I'm a bookworm. I would spend hours in the library reading. When was the last time you went to the library and read a book? You know what? I don't have time. I'm dealing with the housework and the laundry and the kid. And I really got lost in not knowing who I was anymore. And it took probably a good 2 years after the divorce for me to realize that all the things that I was passionate about and excited about, I had put on the back burner to make somebody else happy.
Yeah.
And it did not work out that way.
Yeah. I do see that happen to a lot of women and sometimes husbands too. It's not always a woman thing. I see sometimes men also, or couples, we're living in a different world now, but where you as a spouse kind of put your own identification or in core values and goals and aspirations, dreams, visions, and things that you want to accomplish in life on hold, on a sidebar, put it on a shelf, because you're now so wrapped up into this marriage identification. Not that the marriage isn't essential and vital to the health of that, thriving, having a connection to it. And also then once you also bring in a new entity, or known as a baby, into the dynamics. And with me, we had three. There was a lot, and I was also wrapped up in a career that wasn't really chosen for me. It chose me. So I felt that very similar thing of who am I and how did I get here? I always joke about this song, Once in a Lifetime, by Talking Heads, where David Byrne doesn't sing, but he speaks to you in this very daunting, haunting voice that he has, um, the same as it ever was, I don't know if you know the
Mhm.
song, but then he
I
says,
do.
"This isn't my beautiful wife. This isn't my beautiful house.
Mhm.
How did I get here?" And as he would say those words, I would cry, we're not like bawling hysterically tantrum, but this little internal voice saying, like, yes, like, how did I get here? And like, I let everyone make my decisions for me. That's how I ended up where I was. It was like, well, I guess I'm supposed to get married, so okay, let's just put on the pink dress and look like Linda the Good Witch and get married. Oh, I guess I'm supposed to teach another ballet class, so I guess I'm gonna go wear my tutu and teach another ballet class. Or, this is my life. I'm not making it yours, Karen. But, women do that, and so do men too. Sometimes we take on a role or identification or a label of who we think we're supposed to be. And some of those things might be fabulous and beautiful and authentic and wonderful. And a lot of them you have to step back and go, wait, I don't even like Pepsi, Coke. I always joke about playing Coke and Pepsi when I meet someone. Like, do you know that little game when you find it helps you identify who you are? Like, we'll play Coke or Pepsi. So I say Coke or Pepsi, and you say,
I say Coke.
okay. And I say, green or yellow.
Green.
Okay, so we keep going, summer or winter.
Oh, summer. I'm allergic to
See,
winter.
you answered that beautifully. You knew, you didn't have to go. You knew where it's end. And if you do this for an hour, trust me, you know someone really, really well. But I put in the beginning of my book a list of 230 core values. And I think the first one is acceptance and the last one is wisdom, because they're alphabetical. And a lot of people have a tough time with that. Like I say, you only can pick 25. Like, I want to take all of them with me. I'm like, no, it's a desert island. You can only put 25 things in that bag. And they're like, oh. So it's so common, So now you hang up the phone and your whole world is exploded, which happens a lot. Or you're the one that wants the divorce, and you're now like the bad guy because you have to tell your spouse, like, listen, I'm done. Or, what I also find more and more common is both parties are done. They're both like, do
Yeah.
you see that a lot too, where like it's run its course? It was a sacred contract. It's expired 20 years, 20, 15, 7, who knows what the average is. I think 18 to 22 is kind of like, why? Because that's when they go to college. Yeah, yeah.
I agree. Ours was we I had thought it was over earlier and had actually said something to him. This was maybe 6 months prior.
Mm.
Um, and he looked at me and said, I don't know what you're talking about. No, I love you. All is good. We're wonderful. And I said, okay, great. And we tried. We did a couple of our couples trips and things like that.
Right.
And lo and behold, when I picked up that phone and saw a text message from somebody that there should not have been a text message from, and I went, okay, this isn't what I thought. This is exactly what I thought it was. And I had the conversation with him, and I was so heated and so angry. Like I said, a long time coming. And ultimately, I even said to him, I said, do you want a divorce? And he said no. And I said, okay. So we attempted, but within the first maybe 2 or 3 weeks of attempting to make it work and the marriage counseling and all that, we both looked at each other and we were both kind of like, yeah, no, we're not. We're done.
What are we doing? Yeah.
And then this was 2020, end of January 2020. So if you look at the month of February when we were trying to make it work, okay, great, now we're done. The world shut down. So we spent the rest of the year in the same house together. And it was an interesting experiment. I don't encourage people to do this. However, I will say there have been moments. I mean, I've said this to my ex-husband, and he looks at me like I have three heads. But I've said, I'm grateful for the marriage, I'm grateful for the child, and I'm grateful for the divorce. And there's been a lot of lessons through that. And those lessons allow me to do what I do now in such a powerful way.
Mm, that,
So, yeah, it's an experiment. It's an experience I don't recommend for people, but you know what? You like you said, when the divorce, when the marriage is over, don't drag it out. Let it go because there is joy and happiness on the other side of it.
and many people are familiar with the stages of grieving. Some may not be, but once you get over the initial stage of shock and denial, OMG, I can't believe this is happening. Sure, this is happening. It's not happening. I don't want it to happen. Then you go into stage two of sadness, reminiscence, melancholy, nostalgia. And that shifts into three of negotiating and bargaining. Like, let's go to
Mhm.
therapy. Let's work it out. It's not that bad. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. Well, if you do this and I do that, and if I suddenly turn into a Martian and you're now from Venus, everything will be great. That's the joke about Mars and Venus.
Yep.
And then we go into stage four of frustration or anger, or even sometimes a little, door slamming, cursing, name calling, finger pointing, frustration, blame. But eventually you get to that surrender and letting go, and hopefully a sense of acceptance. But most importantly is really, what is the lesson? What am I learning from this experience? Why? So you never have to go through this again. Nobody, I don't want a repeat client. I'm not a hairdresser. I don't want to see you once a month, that's a joke, but I mean, I love to see my clients once a month. I usually see them a lot more than that, but, and because 85% of divorced people do remarry within 5 years, you can see how there may be a pattern of repeat clients, but I don't want to be that person that did not evaluate with my client. What are you learning? What happened? How did you get here? And did you pick this first? Did they pick you? Like, how did you get in this situation? And I don't want to see you again unless it's to have coffee, right? So let's talk a little bit about this mindset word. It's kind of it's very, I'm going to say 6, 7, 8 years ago, it was the word everyone threw around. Mindset this and mindset that, and everyone's like, what the hell is mindset? So could you define it? What is it? How do you practice it? How do you shift it? And how do you learn to master it?
Okay, so that's a loaded question, and I
It
love
is.
it. I love it. And okay, so mindset is literally just that. If you break it down, you have to decide where your settings are in your brain, in your mind, just like your thermostat. Before I got on this call with you, I adjusted my thermostat because I knew it was going to get a little warm in here with this conversation. So we adjust how we're thinking. We, as humans, are taught from a very young age what we're supposed to think. And I'll give you just a visual that most people can relate to. We start out, we go to elementary school. We get to school, the bell rings, we sit in a class, we have, can I raise my hand, go to the restroom, we have to ask permission. The bell rings again, we change, and everything we do is structured. We are taught when it's okay to go outside, when it's time to do our homework, when it's time to eat lunch. We're taught all these things. We then go on, finish, high school, and boom, you're still doing the same thing, structure. You're basically taught what to think. And then you hit maybe trade school, college, or go right into the workplace. And all of a sudden, everything becomes big and uncertain. So we default back to what we know, which is things like, okay, it's dark outside. It could be scary. There could be monsters. I need to get in my house, and, because the darkness is scary. Or the sun, if you're out in the sun, well, if you're out in the sun too long, maybe you'll get burnt. Well, you know what? If you get sunburned, that could lead to all kinds of skin problems, and oh my God. And our brain just starts playing these tricks on us. So mindset and mindset mastery come from going, you know what? No, I am choosing to think in a different way. So instead of the sun being scary and can burn you and can cause skin problems down the line. Let's talk about how, you know what, the sun gives me vitamin D. Vitamin D affects the way I think and the way I feel, and it's like my happiness. So the sun causes me to feel happy. And if we do that in every section of our life, now I say mindset mastery. I don't believe any of us will ever get to the point where we are masters of this, but we can master the moment. So if you're having a tough time, instead of going into the darkness with it, stop yourself and go, okay, I'm thinking dark thoughts. I want to yell and scream and cuss at somebody. Okay. Option one, grab a journal, journal it out. I have written some really nasty letters to people. I don't send them, but it has allowed me to say what I need to say, get it out of my head, and go, okay, now I feel better. Now let me find some good in this. Let me find the lesson. I had a girlfriend once, she used to say, everyone and every experience is either a lesson or a blessing. And I would find the lesson and shift the way I'm thinking. So that's really where mindset comes in. If you tell yourself, oh, the divorce, this is the end of everything, I'm going to be alone and nobody's going to care about me, and how am I going to take care of myself, and oh my gosh, I'm going to be broke, and what if I'm broke, and then now I'm going to be homeless, oh my gosh, I'm going to be homeless, I can't pay my, and your brain starts going down this path. Mindset mastery is simply going, okay, Karen, stop. Let's look at this realistically. End of a marriage, end of a legal binding contract. Okay, cool. Do I have the ability to create income for myself? Absolutely. Are there jobs out there, businesses out there, careers out there? Absolutely. Do I have friends that have a couch for me if heaven forbid I, don't have money in the bank? Absolutely. Will there be food in my mouth at all? Absolutely. So you start thinking about all of these things one little piece at a time. And when you do that and you just do one little piece at a time, one step becomes 2 steps, becomes 3 steps. And next thing you know, you're 3 months, 6 months, 18 months, 5 years down the line. And you're like, divorce, whatever, I got this. So I hope that helps.
It does. It reminds me a little bit of, sometimes I use the analogy of a remote control.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't like what you're watching, change the channel.
Yes.
Just change it like a buffet. You don't have to eat it all. In fact, you shouldn't. Be very selective in your choices, whether that's, discern. You have to use discernment in your thinking, in your decision making, and what you allow to come into all 5 of your senses, your identification of who you are, your memory, your experiences. We don't just want to bombard ourselves with everything that comes at us like an arrow. You have to put up a few shields, right? Boundaries of what you want to allow in. And if you don't like it, don't eat it. Don't do it. Don't buy it. Don't engage. And when you're going through divorce, or at least at the beginning, I know you mostly work with after, there's a lot of decisions that need to be made, right? Besides the big one, should I or shouldn't I, right? That's the biggest one of, feeling your feelings. There's a lot to take into consideration. Your experiences are real, really tuning into what you're feeling and identifying that as authentic and real. There's one thing about gaslighting: when other people make you question your reality, but when you self-gaslight and you make yourself question your own reality, or you're questioning your own reality and you're doing it to yourself, that's the opposite of mindset, right? It's it. So let's talk a little bit about your book. What is it? Tell us about why you wrote it and who was the ideal reader. I'd love to learn more about about being an author, because as an author, I love the fact that you wrote a book.
I am, and fun little side note. Okay, so the book, I'll just do a little Beauty Within Divorce.
Beautiful.
It's on Amazon. It's Kindle and paperback, and I think it's even free on Kindle Unlimited. I don't know what that is, but that's what they told me. And funny little side note, This came out this past year, so we're about a month out, not even October of 25. My grandparents were authors as well. They were in the medical field. My whole family is some sort of mental health, medical professionals, educators, and all of us are either creatives. We're either writers or musicians. My grandparents, 60 something years ago, in the 60s, wrote several books, but one of them was What Couples Should Know About Marriage. I believe that's the title. And there's an autographed copy around here because at my parents' wedding, they gave it out. And so here we are, 60 something years later, their granddaughter's writing books on divorce. So
Full circle.
it was a very full circle moment. The book came out of my deep seated need to write. And it started out a couple of years post divorce. I was getting a lot of women asking me, how did you do it? What did you do? And can you give me some step by step and some guidance? And so for me, I'm a writer. So everything was coming through me. It was formatted originally, it was this little tiny ebook, about 20 pages. And it was an ebook, and popped it online, and it went crazy. And about 3 or 4 months into that, I had this little nudge. I'm also very spiritual, very woo woo, very much about the universe. And I had this nudge that said, yeah, pull the ebook. There's more to this, and I was just, looking at the universe going, what? But I trust. I pulled it. And the next 2 years were these words just came through me as I had different experiences with helping different women navigate. And we talk about mindset mastery. We talk about creating a source of income in various ways. Nothing, like I'm not going to tell you to go get a job at this store or that store, but it's using your passion and finding ways to bring income to you, which also include getting your mindset right, knowing that you can always provide for yourself. There's self-care. We talk about my two favorite areas, which some may say are a little dark. One is the gut punch of dealing with infidelity, because there's nothing quite like it, finding out that your spouse has been having an affair, multiple affairs, and finding that out. That's a gut punch. And so that we talk about navigating through that. And the second part is the lost ones. It's a chapter I actually called The Lost Ones, which is all of the people that disappear from your life during a divorce. And it could be, you and I had talked a little bit previously, a lot of the family, not just the spouse and the children, but, the in-laws and all the relatives that, I used to spend time with and had conversations with are gone. For me, my divorce happened to be right around the time my mom had gotten very sick very suddenly. And within maybe a 3-week period of time, my divorce was finalized. So my former mother-in-law, who I adore, stepped away, I respect that. But within a couple of weeks, my mom passed away. So within like a 3-week period of time, I lost both mother figures that had been like my life for, my mother my whole life and my mother-in-law for 30 something years. So we talk about navigating through the people that you lose and coming out on the other side with the people who are meant to be there, who are still there, and the new people that will arrive. So it's all about finding your joy. It's no BS. I do not pull any punches. I will tell you, there's some dark stuff that happens through divorce, but there's a beauty on the other side of it. And I believe that if we have the right guidance, in my book, I do talk about, you've got psychiatrists and therapists and life coaches and divorce coaches and mediators and counselors and what they each do and who may be the person that you want to go looking for in terms of what you need. Yes, I'm a mental health therapist, but I am not the one to give legal advice. I am the first one that says, look for this in an attorney. Here are some questions you may want to ask. Do your due diligence. And helping women get to the other side. There's some journal prompts, there's some affirmations, and it's just, I say this with the word divorce as well. It's just a fun book to get through divorce with.
Well, I love that you did that. Mine ended up becoming a Better Divorce Blueprint, which is now the book, the workbook, the audiobook, and the online course, because it's 8 modules that's broken into each module is 6 different lessons or videos, and hundreds of downloadables, portals, checklists, resources, you name it, additional videos too, both in high conflict and low conflict. But it's because I spend so much time in a courtroom. After 8.5 years of taking notes, not only about my own situation, but hundreds of others, I started to notice what people did well and what people didn't do well. And I noticed patterns of really smart action, what to wear, what not to wear, what to say, what not to say, the chemistry between attorneys and clients, and my own personal experience being in the courtroom so much, but also through depositions and uh, preparation of interrogatories and discovery and the whole litigation process that is so convoluted and dark and mysterious and difficult and confusing and overwhelming to, let's just face it, the majority of people going through divorce. And it doesn't have to be that, just sort of demystifying Better Divorce Blueprint as before, during, and after, which is also an acronym for Better Divorce Academy, BDA, before, during, and after. So I love the fact that you took your experience and kind of made it something fun and playful. I don't think my book is so fun. There's a few more fun-ish parts of it, or shall we say engaging, captivating, inspiring, compelling. Um, yeah, moments for you to get through it, but I wouldn't exactly call it fun. So I
We
think
gotta
you
put,
definitely got the caveat on fun here.
well, fun may not be the best word for it, but it's much lighter than, the heaviness that goes along with, being in a courtroom, and that's a lot, and people need you, they need the Better Divorce Blueprint, they need what you do, because there's so much to navigate. I was fortunate, I will say, I was very fortunate in the way we were able to navigate our divorce. Um, Neither one of us had to set foot in a courtroom.
Perfect.
We were able to come to an agreement, and I will never forget it. I mean, it's kind of been, seared in my brain. I remember I had left. I had moved over to Florida, and my ex was in another state. But he was filing there because I'd only been here a few months,
Right.
and
And you have to be a
so
resident of 6 months to do
right. So we had everything. We went back and forth several times. I had my attorney look over the documents and everything. I don't know what he did. That's up to him. But we got everything all situated. And hey, I did his laundry for 30 years. I don't need to check on his divorce attorney now. So
so.
we,
I understand. Yeah.
we got it all done. And I remember sending it back to him, all notarized. And he said, okay, he sent me a message and he said, okay, I'm taking it to the courthouse. It'll probably be like 60 days. We'll get a notice. And I said, okay, great. And about 2 or 3 hours later, he sent me a text and he said, check your email. And I
Okay.
said, check my email. Okay, great. There's a problem. That was my first thought. I pull up my email, and there is a lovely email from my now ex husband with the attachment of a scanned copy of our signed paperwork. And I picked up the phone and I said, what just happened? And he said, I walked into the courthouse, and if I remember correctly, he walked in, he went to turn in the paperwork, and there happened to be a judge coming through, and the clerk said, this is non-contested. And he said, okay, did it, stamp, stamp, done, done. And within an hour, it was done. And I just sat there looking at that email, and he said, you're going to get an actual physical copy shortly. And I did. But it was the most bizarre moment. And I will say, in that moment, there's one piece of advice I give to women, and it's not at all legal, but it has to do with the divorce process, which is if you think you are going to go back to your maiden name, it is much less expensive to do it during the divorce process than it is later. I actually had left my married name, didn't think twice about it. And everything I had done, all my publications, all my work had been in my married name. So I left it. And I woke up about 2 years post divorce and I went, oh no, I am no longer that person. And it was several $1,000s and a couple of court dates. That's when I had to set foot in a courtroom
Yeah,
to get my name back.
it is a
Yeah,
process too of
yeah,
the release of it.
yeah.
I chose to keep it until my youngest was 18 because the children were teenagers when
Mhm.
we divorced. So, but it's a pain in the you know what. It's one of the
It is.
chapters in Better Divorce Blueprint to name change or not to name change. That is the question. So, you got to start with your social security number, and then you have to think about your financial documents and your passport and your driver's license and yeah, it is.
It was a process, and I am glad you have it in your book and you share it because that is definitely something that I will say nobody told me.
Yeah.
And so mine was grown and flown and over 18 by the time we got divorced. But it was very strange. It wasn't like the chapter wasn't quite closed until the
Mm-hmm.
name changed and I walked into the DMV and everything and I went, huh, I like this. This is cool.
Yeah, I've got a new name. Yeah, and I was really torn too because I'm a junior and I
uh,
didn't want to go back to my maiden name with the confusion of being first name, middle name, and maiden name being identical with
yes.
that of my mother. And she, I think, and then I got remarried. So I kind of closed that chapter and went to that name. But names are a pain in the ass, Karen. They just,
You know, it's
they're just
it was so complex. And then,
no
you're
joke. I was like, can't I just be like Cher or Madonna and just
seriously.
have one name? Like, the whole middle name and like last name. And my father had three girls. So
Oh
we all
my.
kind of made when we got married, our maiden name, our middle name. So then
Yeah.
it kind of became a first name, a middle name, a maiden name, and a hyphen and a married name. My name was a paragraph. It was
Yeah.
obnoxious.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to have a nice short name now, Paulette Rigo. It's so exciting.
I love it.
I can spell it really, although sometimes people say Rigo, but whatever, all phonetics. Well, I love this conversation. And as you can see, we both survived, everyone. So,
We did.
and whether you choose to remarry or not, your life is yours to create on your terms. And divorce is a difficult, expensive, long, traumatic experience for some, but it doesn't have to be. 97% of divorce cases do not go to trial. That's a really high percentage of people. And as an ADR, alternative dispute resolution family mediator, I help couples avoid court, save all unnecessary legal fees, divorce with grace and dignity and wisdom, and keep their private life private and control the process and the conversation and hopefully the agreement, the resolution, and the outcome themselves without having an anonymous third party that doesn't know you create the outcome for you. Now, those 3% that do go to trial, they probably need to go to trial, maybe not all of them. And then, of course, there's that lovely appeals process. So, unfortunately, I went through that as well. So, if you are struggling with anything going through divorce, whether it be contemplation, a confusion to conclusion, I can handle it for you. Not for you, recorrect with you. So I love this conversation. Thank you so much for your time. What is the best way for people to learn more about you, follow you, and potentially work with you? Read your book.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I have loved being here. You have made this a wonderful experience.
Thank you.
The easiest way to find me is simply my first and last name. So it's just KarenGottlieb.com. My socials are on there. My book is on Amazon, but it is also listed on my website. My website is probably the best way to connect with me. Um, yeah, I am. I am super. I'm very easy to find, and KarenGottlieb.com is the best way.
And a Karen is spelled with a C and a Y.
It is. It's CARYN.
Parents for being very, hipster in the day, right? So I'm
Mm.
just kidding. Thanks everyone, and until next time, make it better. I wish I could tell you to make it the best divorce, but you can make it the better divorce. And until next time, I'll see you soon.